All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is great to see you all on this fine Tuesday evening. A very warm welcome. Welcome to Torah Studies. All right, so this week our Torah portion is Re'eh, and we have a phenomenal conversation. So the discussion tonight mainly centers around the concept of gratitude and the concept of humility and the concept of tzedakah and the concept of our actions mirroring but even triggering what happens above. So there's a lot of different themes, that we touch upon that are going to be at play today. Oh, let me welcome everybody online. I forgot to say hi to everybody. Dr. Maxie, good to see you. Amy, good to see you. Ellie, good to see you. Mom, good to see you. Richard, good to see you. Doreen, good to see you. Danny, good to see you. And Joel, good to see you. All right. And of course, our in-person crew, strong and solid. And we got folks coming back in, as we just mentioned before, from out of town. You would be folks. How does that sound? All right. Now, let's get into the theme. The main theme of today's discussion is the mitzvah of tzedakah. So to explore this, we're going to jump right into our text. This is going to be from the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 15, verses 4 through 11. And here, the Torah talks about the idea of poverty and the idea of helping those that are in need, which of course is the foundation of the mitzvah of tzedakah. Scott, if you don't mind, please begin and read. Well, where it says however, it actually starts with verse 4, where it says however.
However, there will be no needy among you, for God will surely bless you in the land that God is giving you for an inheritance to possess. However, if you hearken to the voice of God, be careful to do all this commandment that I am commanding you today. For God has blessed you as he spoke to you, and you will lend to many nations, but you will not borrow, and you will rule over many nations, but they will not rule over you. If there will be among you a needy person from one of your brothers in one of your cities, in your land God is giving you, do not harden your heart or close your hand against your needy brother. Rather, you shall certainly open your hand to him, and you shall lend him sufficiently for his needs, which he is lacking. Beware lest there be in your heart an unfaithful thought, saying, the seventh year, the year of release has approached, and you will begrudge your needy brother and not give him. He will cry out to God against you, and it will be a sin to you. You shall surely give him, and your heart shall not be grieved when you give to him. For because of this thing, God will bless you in all your work and in all your endeavors. For there will never cease to be needy with the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall surely open your hand to your brother, to your poor one, and to your needy one in your land.
Okay, so it's a long reading, and there's a lot of themes. Thank you for reading that. There's a lot of themes that we just read. I want to point out what seems to be a contradiction. Did anybody notice? Well, how about y'all point it out? What contradiction is there within this reading?
So if there's a poor person in your town.
Well, can I make the question stronger? Verse 4 says, there will be no needy among you. And then the last verse says, for there will never cease to be needy within the land. Huh. Okay.
And you're helping them.
Oh, interesting. You're saying after you give, then there won't be needy. Okay, interesting. The way I read it, and of course, there are many classical commentaries that certainly will help with this. But if you look at the opening two verses, it says, there will be no needy among you, for God will bless you. And then it says, however, you notice there's a double however? Man, like who wrote this? God? No, I'm kidding. But like who wrote, like this is not, I wouldn't like say that this is the, but it's a translation. And the truth is in the Hebrew, you have two different Hebrew words. In verse number dalid, it says ephes, translated as however. And in verse 5, it says rak, translated here as however. Meaning, I'm not saying what the actual translation, I'm saying our English translation translates two different words, ephes and rak, as however. However, I disagree. How does that sound for a third however?
Isn't
However,
rock
I
only?
personally disagree in this translation.
Doesn't
And I
rock
would
mean
say,
only?
sorry?
I thought rock meant only.
Yes. Which is the way I would translate it. So going back to the English and trying to make sense of this, I would translate this as, however, maybe. Meaning, I'm about to drop a cool thing on you, and that is there will be no needy among you because God is going to bless you. Rak, then the next verse says rak, which means only, provided that's only going to be the case, meaning when is it going to be that there will be no needy among the land because God is going to bless you? That's only if you hearken to the voice of God to be careful to do all the commandment that I'm commanding you today. Meaning, it's conditional. It's not like God is promising or the Torah is promising there will never be anyone that's in need ever again. I mean, that's not a thing. It's there won't be needy if you hearken to the commandment. And then what does the Torah, what does this little section conclude with? Yeah, there's going to be needy people. You know what that means? We're not going to be perfect. That's kind of what that means. Like, lest you think that we're going to get this right all the time, well, the truth is we're not going to get it right all the time, and therefore there will be needy, and therefore we need to have the provision. Can we say provisio? It sounds more Italiano. Therefore, we have to have this provision of needing the concept of tzedakah. But let's break down exactly the way. That's all my contextual explanation. But let's actually break down the verses that speak to the mitzvah of tzedakah. So, verse number 7. Okay? What is the mitzvah of verse 7? Who can identify which words signify the mitzvah? The mitzvah will always be an action item. What is verse 7? What is the mitzvah in 7? That's it. Do not harden your heart or close your hand. That's a verb. Not really a verb. Whatever. Those are verbs, meaning it's something to do, but not in this case, not to do. So do not harden your heart or close your hand. That is a negative prohibition. If someone's in need, don't be closed-hearted and closed-handed. I don't know if those are actual phrases in English, but nonetheless, we're going to employ them. Don't be closed-hearted. Don't say, not my issue. Don't close your hand and say, I'm not going to support. Open your heart, open your hand. Next, by the way, harden your heart. What does that sound like? That's right, Pharaoh. A little shout out to Pharaoh. Remember what it's like when someone hardens their heart when you're in need? Yeah, don't do that to someone else. It's a call. We call this in comedy a callback. That's what it is, right? This is a callback to the idea of hardening the heart. Next, verse 8 is the positive mitzvah. Again, negative mitzvah is a do not do, and a positive mitzvah is a do. What's the positive mitzvah? What are the words that signal the positive mitzvah in text 8? Open your hand. That's it. Open your hand and lend him sufficiently for his needs, and all that can be unpacked, right? But it's the mitzvah is to give, and the prohibition is not to not give when someone is in need. This is the classical mitzvah of tzedakah. Tzedakah means, okay, let me break this down for a quick second. Tzedakah is different than what we call meiser, which is tithing. Tithing is, we've talked about this before, tithing is proactive, meaning you take a tenth of your assets, a tenth of your earnings, and you say a tenth, 10%, I'm giving to a good cause, I'm giving to, I was about to say tzedakah, but again, I want to differentiate. I'm giving to a good cause, I'm giving to a person that needs it, I'm giving to an organization that needs it, etc. 1/10, that is what we call meiser ksafim, tithing, monetary tithe. Then there's the idea, again, we can call everything tzedakah. It's, you can, people say that, but if we want to differentiate, tzedakah, pure tzedakah means if somebody comes to you and says, I have a need, or if you become aware of a need and the person's asking, then it is a mitzvah to satisfy that need to the best of your ability. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to support them single-handedly, but it means that you got to participate. Okay, make sense? Two different mitzvahs. One is a responsive mitzvah, someone's in need, I'll help. And the other one is a proactive mitzvah, meaning I'm going to take 10% and give it to a good cause. There's another detail that I think is interesting in this reading, although it's not the focus of tonight's class, which talks about when the 7th year approaches. Because what happens in the Shemitah year, that's the sabbatical year, all sorts of loans and other, financial obligations kind of fall away. So a person's like, well, and by the way, just so you know, the Torah does frame this in the context of a loan, but we understand that it's not just about lending money, but giving money without any expectation of return. Although I will say, lending money to someone in need and helping them is also a tremendous mitzvah, provided that the loan is without interest, because of course there's a prohibition to lend with interest. How do we explain banks? I guess everyone's got to make some money somehow, right? But it's not necessarily something that is Anyway, that's a much larger conversation about how that works. Okay, but getting back to the point, loophole, we'll have to wait for another class. No, the truth is it's a big question when it comes to Jewish bank lending to Jewish people that are all binding under this biblical law, under this Jewish law. It becomes a big question about how that works. So banks in Israel, etc., Jewish-owned banks in New York, Brooklyn, whatever it is, lending to a Jew, things can get complicated. Back to the story, the Torah says, if it's the seventh year and you're concerned, oh, what's going to happen? I'm never going to see the money again. The guy's not going to have to pay it. So the Torah says, and just to reset this, I'm going to pull this up one more time for myself and for y'all. Lest there be, verse 9, beware, lest there be in your heart an unfaithful thought. The seventh year is approaching. Good to see you. And so is Yaakov. The seventh year and Yaakov are approaching. The year of release has approached, and you will begrudge your needy brother and not give him, and he will cry out to God against you, and it will be a sin. So the Torah says, don't be that person. You shall surely give him, and your heart shall not be grieved when you give him, for because of this thing, God will bless you in all your work and all your endeavors, meaning lest you think that you're going to lose by giving, you only stand to gain. In fact, the Hebrew word for give is, one of the Hebrew forms of giving is natan. Natan means give. It's also the name of my firstborn son, Nasan. But anyway, the Hebrew word Natan is spelled with three letters, nun, taf, nun. And it's one of those words that is hold on, it's called a palindrome, right? I actually just got one for Hanukkah. I've been flying my palindrome everywhere. Joking. What is a palindrome? I'm trying. A palindrome, if it works. A palindrome is a word that you can read both forward and backward, same thing. Natan. It works both ways. I've tried it multiple times and it works. So the cool thing about that is what it teaches us is that giving is not just a one-way street. When you give, you also get, right? When you give, whatever you give, you're going to get. And that's what God is saying. You take care of my people, I'll take care of you. You have nothing to. Oh, you make a calculation. The seventh year is approaching. If I lend it, I'm not going to have it. I'm going to lose it. God says, hold on, bro. Who runs this world? Last time I checked, I run this world. I can make it happen. Have faith in me. Even the money that you're concerned about says, in God we trust. If the money trusts God or declares it, we should certainly trust God and kind of embrace this blessing that literally is taught to us in God's book in the Torah. All right, so now that is the core mitzvah of tzedakah. Let's jump into halacha. So that's the biblical source, and let's see how this is articulated and formulated in one of the codes of Jewish law, or one of the original codes, which is from the works of Maimonides in his Mishnah Torah. So now let's jump to, hold on, this is going to be text number 2. Text number 2 is from Maimonides in his Mishnah Torah. Yaakov, please read. 82. 82 text 2.
It is a positive command to give charity to the poor according to what's appropriate for the poor person, if this is within the financial capacity of the donor, as the verse states. You shall certainly open your hand to him, and you shall support him, a stranger and a resident, and they shall live with you, and your brother shall live with you. Anyone who sees a poor person asking and turns their eyes away, and does not give charity, transgresses the negative commandment. As the verse states, do not harden your heart or close your hand against your needy brother.
That was the verse, thank you. That was the verse we just read. The negative commandment is taken from Deuteronomy, the positive from Leviticus. You might be wondering, well, why didn't Maimonides take it all from our verse in Deuteronomy? The answer is, if there's an earlier source in the books, he'll go book 3 over book 5 every day of the week. In other words, the first time the mitzvah tzedakah is mentioned is in Leviticus, and that is what he quotes, although it's repeated here in Deuteronomy, Devarim, which is called Mishnah Torah, which repeats a lot of the essential mitzvot from the previous books. Okay, it makes sense. So Maimonides says clearly there's a double mitzvah. The mitzvah is to give, and the prohibition is against not giving. So you have to give, and you can't not give. Okay, yeah.
What if it's a scam? Like, what if it's a family of...
what if it's a scam? Listen, I don't want to spend too much time on scams, but scam, you got to use your your best discernment, best judgment, ask around, whatever. That's more, I feel like that's more human advice, and that's that we can figure out. Now, let's jump forward and talk about the significance of these verses in our Torah portion landing this time of year. As you may know, we are quickly not hurtling, that would be jumping over, hurtling down the track toward the high holidays. In fact, just to make sure you're getting ready to get your Tishrei on, this Shabbat is Shabbat Mevarchim Elul, meaning it's the Shabbat that blesses the month of Elul, is this coming Shabbat. Why is that significant? It's significant because next week will already be in the month of Elul. And once you're in the month of Elul, you have only a few weeks left to Rosh Hashanah. And again, before you know it, you have to start writing on all your checks 5787. 5787. Of course, with the brand new Torah Center community calendar that we are vigorously working on to get out very soon. Stay tuned for more information on that calendar. All right, so this Shabbat, we're already blessing the month of Elul, and thus we're getting ready for the high holidays. And it's apropos that this Torah portion contains the theme of tzedakah. Because if you think about the high holidays and the mitzvot that are associated with the high holidays and the blessings that we want and like what we do this time of year, what is one of the big mitzvot that we do? All right, I don't know why I'm asking like this. One of the big mitzvahs that we do is the mitzvah tzedakah. So it all makes sense. It all comes together, right? Torah, tefillah, tzedakah, right? Tzedakah is one of the big three. It's one of the major pillars of this time of year. Now, let's jump into text number 3. Text number 3 is coming from, once again, Mishnah Torah, and he talks about high holiday season, the days of awe, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, and how we are to get ready and to observe these days. Dasi, please read.
Just as a person's merits and sins are weighed at the time of his or her death, so too the sins of every inhabitant of the world together with their merits are weighed on the festival of Rosh Hashanah. The average person's verdict remains tentative until Yom Kippur. For these reasons, it is customary for all Jews to give profusely to charity, perform many good deeds, and be occupied with mitzvot from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur to a greater extent than during the remainder of the year. During these 10 days, the custom is for everyone to rise while it is still night and pray in the synagogues with heart-rending words of supplication until daybreak.
Okay, so Maimonides, thank you for reading that. Rambam Maimonides explains the gravity of this time of year. Again, the time of year that we're getting ready to get ready for. And he talks about the fact that just like when a person passes away and their actions are judged, a person is judged on Rosh Hashanah. The verdict is sealed, or concluded and sealed on Yom Kippur. And he says, therefore, okay, middle paragraph is the key paragraph. For these reasons, because of the importance of this time of year, he says, it is customary for all Jews to do what? To give tzedakah, give profusely. So the first thing he mentions, the first observance he mentions, in conjunction, in the spirit of this time of year, he says is giving tzedakah. And then the very next words he says, perform many good deeds and be occupied with mitzvot. So it's weird. You have 3 different terms. Number 1, tzedakah. Number 2, ma'asim tovim, good deeds. And number 3, mitzvot. And you might ask, well, isn't charity a good deed? Isn't charity a mitzvah? Why is it broken out as a separate category? Does that make sense what I'm asking? In other words, why does Rambam say, here's what you need to do. Here's your checklist. Number 1, tzedakah. Number 2, good deeds. Number 3, mitzvot. You might ask, what's the difference between good deeds and mitzvot? That's a valid question. That's not tonight's topic. But I'm going to ask, why is tzedakah broken out as separate from either good deeds or mitzvot or a combination of the two? And why is it the very first thing he mentions? That what do you do this time of year? It's a time of judgment, a time of gravity. And what do? Give tzedakah and good deeds and mitzvot. Tzedakah is ranked number 1 in this order. There's got to be significance. So our question is, why tzedakah? Of all the mitzvot, there's a lot of mitzvot, A lot of good things, a lot of good things that we can do. We can be more attentive to prayer. We can be more attentive to Torah study. We can be more attentive to honoring our parents. We can be more attentive to all sorts of things. And yet, the very first thing that Maimonides mentions is the idea of tzedakah. The question is why. So that's going. We always like to present a little bit of tension in order to allow the class to unfold. That's our tension. It's not one of these, huge questions of a contradiction or a puzzle. It's more of a quizzical question, which is why? Why tzedakah? Why does tzedakah come first this time of year? So to understand this, we need to think about the concept of judgment in general. Now, when you and I think about standing in judgment, and as Maimonides just said, when a person passes away, all their merits and all their sins are weighed. And likewise, this time of year, high holiday season, a person sins. I love the fact, by the way, and I don't know the answer to this. Maybe commentators discuss it, why when he talks about death, he says merits and sins. When he talks about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, he talks about sins weighed together with merits. You see, he reverses the order. I don't know if you noticed that. You see that? Merits, sins, and then sins, merits. Either way, I don't have an answer. I'm just raising questions. I'm just asking questions. I sound like Matlock or one of these guys. Look, when we think about a person being, judged and vice and virtue being weighed, right? Most of us think the following. Well, if I deserve it, if I earn it, if I have enough merits, then I can guarantee myself a good judgment. And I will have earned that good judgment on the basis of my merits. Is that a reasonable thing to think? Meaning, huh?
That's what he's saying.
That's what he's saying. Meaning, there are sins and there are merits. And what happens if you have more merits than sins? Great. And what happens if the opposite? Maybe not so great. I don't know. I don't work in the admin department in heaven. But what I do know is very simply this. What I do know is that a person would look at this and come to the the apparently reasonable conclusion that the more merits they have, the more they earn the blessing. Okay. However, what we're going to learn today is a little bit of a different take on this. Because ultimately, when you think about earning something, it usually is in the context. Let me give you a typical context. This is not the only context, but a typical context of earning something. What would earning be? Earning means, let's say I did work for you. Like you needed some work. I did work, and so I earn a paycheck. That's earning, because you needed something and earned it. What if I did something that you had no need for? Did I earn compensation? You can turn around and say, I don't need that. Like I have no need for that. Remember the old window washers in Times Square, right? You would pull up to the light and they would jump out and they would wash your windows and say, now pay up. And you're like,
Go to my grandmother in the Bronx.
Yeah.
Be on your windshield like so fast.
right.
It was crazy.
It's crazy. It's like
They-
instant windshield washing. And like, who are you? And I don't want to pay. And if you didn't pay, what happened if you didn't pay? I don't know.
You know,
Right. You don't want to find out. Okay, there you go. You don't want to find out. You don't want to find out. So there you go. So it's like one of those things where I didn't ask for it. I don't need it. So here's the question. When it comes to God, does God need our mitzvot? Does God need our merits? Are we filling some sort of deficiency when it comes to God? Is that how this works? It doesn't seem to be the case. Dr. Max, you wanted to jump in?
Yes, thank you. So on the merit part, I can see that, and I can see you could argue, well, we have these 613 commandments, and clearly he asked us to do them. But isn't it also part of the prayers in Yom Kippur that we are also asking Hashem to forgive us? So not only are we asking him to weigh our merits, but to pardon our offenses?
Yes, that is correct. That is absolutely correct. And that's true. And so we're saying overlook this, etc. But I want to even move, but I want to focus even on the merit part and ask the question, what kind of merit is a merit that's not even needed by the other party? Because the truth is, can we attribute a need to God? Can we say that God needed your mitzvah? And if he didn't need your mitzvah, right, then when you did it, okay, but did you really earn a credit for it? I mean, this is the question we're asking. And let's take a look at some sources. It may sound like a strange question because it goes against a lot of different themes that we've discussed in the past. But let's take a look at this question as kind of supported by some verses. This is going to be text number 5. Tobo, we're up to you, I think. Text 5. Oh, you didn't read Mira. After all that.
It's like I'm not even.
It's like you're not even here. I'm so sorry. I was trying to do the math in my head. You know what threw me off? We skipped text 4 and we're up to text 5. So I'm like, number 5? Okay. All right, Mira, it's all you. Text 5.
If you sinned, what do you do to him? And if your transgressions are many, what do you do to him? If you are righteous, what do you give him? Or what does he take from your hand?
Take a look at these lines. This is from Job, from Eov. And it's basically evoking this idea of, like, if you sin, are you hurting God? Right? Like, are you actually like, does God get upset because you're not doing what he wants? Like, is that?
No, it's all us.
Oh, hold on 1 second. So can we imagine that we're taking something away from God? And but by sinning, and can we imagine that we're giving something to God when we do a mitzvah? Right. 6 is about sin and 7 is about being righteous. If you're righteous, what do you give him? Or what does he take from your hand? Meaning God needs nothing. God lacks nothing. And therefore a mitzvah, what's a mitzvah? Mitzvah is great. And like Doreen, maybe I think what you're saying is, well, maybe it's good for us also. Maybe it makes us better people. But what does it mean that we have these merits and we're being judged based on the merits? It's almost like a merit seems that the context of a merit, if you're going to someone and saying, hey, give me reward for all of the merits that I've earned, it almost seems like, it's
Manipulative.
it's not only, it's that, but it's also like, again, the whole concept of I did something good, so give me a reward. That's in a construct of you doing something good that would benefit the one that you're expecting to give you whatever they're going to give you.
It's called a transactional relationship.
There you go. Thank you, Mom. It's a transactional situation. And Yaakov. What's a transactional thing? Meaning, like, clean your room. I want your room. The parent wants the room clean. You clean the room, you get whatever you get, or however that works. So, but but when you're talking about God who's infinite and we're finite and and God is untouchable, so then what is it? What is a merit and what is a demerit? The whole thing doesn't make any sense. And so when we're being judged on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, what's actually happening? So I want to kind of reimagine this concept based on Jewish philosophy and Jewish mysticism. In other words, what we're going to do tonight is go much, much deeper into the simple way of understanding it. Again, the simple way of understanding it is that we're standing in judgment, and all the records, all the phone records, and whatever, all the closed caption recordings are being measured. By the way, I have to pause here for a moment and share the following. Right now in Brooklyn, in many parts of Brooklyn, they have speed cameras. Now, I know in many places there are speed cameras. In many places, speed cameras, I think, are illegal. But in many places, it is legal. In many places, they're enforced. In many places, they're not enforced. But I will say in Brooklyn, to the best of my knowledge, and those that are close to me's experience, they are monitoring these speed cameras very well. And they'll put 25 mile per hour speed limits on residential roads. And, which may be reasonable, although, I don't know, some residential roads are 35 or 30. But in Brooklyn, it's pretty much entirely, maybe the whole New York, I don't know, but Brooklyn is 25, which means that if you have lights are clear and things are clear and there's no one around and you're going 35, you will get a ticket in the mail. It's going to happen. They have you on camera. Everything is being watched. And so that is a demerit. You will get, and by the way, if you rent, don't ask me how I know, but if you rent the car, you will get not only the ticket, you'll get a surcharge from the rental car. Boom, they will hit you with a processing fee. Okay. So says Google. I'm kidding. Okay, back to the story. Back to the story here. So, merits and demerits seem to apply when there's some sort of transactional relationship. Oh, you did good, here's a reward. Oh, you didn't do good. Why? Because the party on the other end says, oh, you made me feel good. All right, this is what I'm going to do for you. You made me not feel good. Here's what I'm going to do against you. But that's when you're talking about another party that you have a relationship with on that level. What if you're talking about God? So what kind of, as Job says, as Eob says, like if you sin, are you hurting God? And if you're doing a mitzvah, are you helping God? It doesn't make sense. The whole thing doesn't make sense. Now, yes, we can question the whole space of Judaism, but let's talk about that right now. Meaning, again, I just want to explain, we're going on a much deeper level into the theme of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and the concept of judgment, mitzvahs, averos, good deeds, sins, and the whole thing. And so here's how I want to break it down, and we're going to use a very simple analogy. And the analogy is actually going to play on the infinite gulf between creator and creation by focusing on an example on a human level. Now, the difference between the parties that I'm going to mention are way smaller than the gulf between God and us, but we're going to use this as some sort of frame of reference. So here we go. Imagine, and we'll have a reading that states this exactly. Imagine you have Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein is a genius, and you are enthralled with Albert Einstein because you've read science magazines and science newspapers, but we're back in the days when Albert Einstein lived. So maybe it's a science journal or maybe it's something, but you definitely were not watching Albert Einstein on TikTok with his tongue out. That was not something that you were watching. But you know about Albert Einstein and you're very impressed and it's amazing. And then one day you're walking down the street and in that small town, none other than Albert Einstein, it's not 2026, okay? 100 years ago, you see Albert Einstein strolling down the street and you are amazed. And then to your shock and astonishment, he walks straight over to you and he says, and imagine you're a kid and he says, "Hey kid," but he says it nicely, not like what I'm saying now. He says, "Hey kid," or "Hey there," or "Hey my lad," or whatever. "Can you please fetch a glass of water for me?" He asks you for a favor. How do you feel? He's your hero. How do you feel?
Great.
Top of the world. Top of the world. Albert Einstein's talking to me. Oh my gosh. Now,
Chosen.
yes, of course you know what I'm really referring to. The famous Mean Joe Green Coca-Cola commercial. That's, of course, what I'm referring to, right? You guys remember that? Oh, he's in the tunnel. Pittsburgh Steelers, he's in the tunnel. He says, "Hey, kid." He grabs the kid's Coke. He drinks the Coke in one take. I mean, it's not huge, but he drinks the Coca-Cola bottle. And however it ends. Coca-Cola, incredible marketing ever since back in the day till today. And if you want to see all the marketing, you can always check it out at the Coca-Cola Museum where it's preserved for all eternity. Okay, here's the point. Someone who is greater than you, and again, it's sports, but getting back to, intelligence and brilliance, a guy like Einstein, him even engaging in conversation with you is super flattering. And it's like, wow, and it's amazing. And what it does also is it creates some sort of relationship between you and him that did not exist previously. Now, you're both human beings, sure, but you didn't have a relationship. In fact, you would be in awe of him otherwise, but now he's coming over to you and he's kind of like coming down to you. And even if he's asking for something very menial, a very menial favor, like, "Could you help me with X, Y, and Z?" Doesn't make a difference. Or maybe you're in the, you're in the supermarket. And it's like, "Where can I find the, the raw organic something or other?" And you help him find it because I'm sure they sold raw organic stuff back in the day, labeled as such. The point is that you now have a relationship. You're forging a relationship with someone that you didn't have a relationship. And it doesn't matter what he asked. The point is that he asked and that you are responding and that you are engaging. And that's what creates the connection. This is a very apt analogy for what a mitzvah is and how we connect with God. God is infinite. We are finite. There is otherwise really no connection, no thematic connection between us and him other than creator creation. I guess there's some sort of, relationship on that level, but there's no close relationship. But that's what a mitzvah is. What is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is God stepping down to us and saying, "This is what I'd like you to do." Right? This is what I may not need it on some like larger level, although that's another topic to get into for another day. I may not need it on that level, but I want it, and I'm asking you to do it. And so therefore, in this moment, I kind of need it because I want it. So I need it because I want it. So if you want it, then you need it. And I want you, or I need you to do it. And when you do it, suddenly what happens is, what transpires is a connection is forged. It's not just what you're doing, it's the connection that happens. Every mitzvah is a tangible action item that you and I can do in this physical world. So God says, I'd like you to please do it for me. I'd like you to take these black leather boxes, and wrap them to your arm and put it on your head. Boom, that's a mitzvah. I'd like you to take this, I'm looking at the picture. Is that a lulav? What are they holding on to? That's not a lulav, but it could be, or a swing. But imagine you take a lulav branch and a palm frond and the other items, and you shake it up, and that's what I want you to do. And you might say, well, that connects me with God? That's crazy. Yeah, well, God asks you to do it, and you do it. Doesn't matter what he asked. It's the fact that he asked, and that you did it. That's what forms the connection. Does that make sense? That's what a mitzvah is. Let's take a look at some texts that talk about this very truth in a powerful way. All right, back inside our text. And Toba, now we're up to you. This is text number 6 from Tanya, chapter 4.
Infinite. His greatness is beyond all measure, and no thought can grasp him at all. Not his essence, not his will, and not his wisdom. Nevertheless, our sages say, wherever you find the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be he, there you find his humility. God compressed his will and his wisdom into the 613 mitzvot of the Torah, so that every soul within the human body can grasp them with the mind and fulfill them, each according to its capacity, through action, speech, and thought.
Thank you. How powerful is this reading, this excerpt from chapter 4 of Tanya? It is unbelievable. I've answered my own question. Look, you tell me Einstein says, hey, kid, let's engage in some physics convo. You are out of that conversation. You have nothing to say as a kid to Einstein. But if Einstein says, hey, can you get me some water? And you get the water, boom, now you have a connection. You have a relationship. There's something that you've done for him, and he wanted it, and he asked you, and you did it, and you fulfilled it, and it made him happy. All of that stuff, it happened. It hit. And this is what the Alter Rebbe is saying in Tanya. He's saying the same thing. God is infinite. It's beyond measure. It's beyond any grasp. You can't understand him. You can't figure him out. You can't do anything. But you know what you can do? You can do what he asks you to do. Because when he steps down into Torah and the 613 mitzvot, every single one of them is an action item. And you can do it in action, in speech, or in thought. You can think about the Torah or whatever it is. You can speak the blessings, the prayers, and you can do the mitzvot. And that's all within the capacity of the human being. And that forges an incredible connection, a connection with something that is otherwise absolutely infinite and untouchable. Let's continue with text number 7.
That we cannot grasp with our mind, right? Because they're not.
Right. It doesn't mean, yes, excellent. It doesn't mean that every mitzvah you'll be able to hit all 3: mind, speech, and action. Some with the mind, some with the speech, and some with the action. But it means that no matter what mitzvah it is, it's touching you physically somewhere. Whether it's a piece of Torah that you're studying, that makes sense. It's only because God compressed it down to make sense to us. Or whether you're praying with your words, or whether you're doing something with your hands. This is how God makes himself accessible to us. Otherwise, like Einstein, what is the kid in Einstein? What are they going to discuss? Like quantum theory? Like there's no relationship there. But you know what they can talk about? I don't know, glass of water or baseball or whatever it is. Something on the kid's level. All right, take a look at the next text. I'm going to read this one, text 7, also from the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad. We need an explanation, he says. Where does this power come from that an awakening above depends on awakening below? Meaning, how can a created being have any relationship or relevance at all to arouse supernal kindness from the Creator? There is no comparison to him, and no thought can grasp him whatsoever. Meaning, how can you and I, by pushing certain buttons of the mitzvahs, trigger things from above? How does that work if God is infinite? So he continues, this is what the verse goes on to explain that you swore to our fathers. We were granted power to draw down divine influence through doing mitzvot, meaning God bound himself with an oath, committing himself, as it were, to grant his power to those below, something that a human being could never have accessed on his or her own. And this is, I think, one of the cores of Judaism, and it's it really fights against the arrogance of spiritual pursuit. And I have to really talk about this topic. A lot of people think like, oh, I'm meditating and I'm getting closer to God and I'm discovering God and I'm finding out about God. And Judaism says, slow it down, cowboy, because at the end of the day, you're never going to be able to, on your own, reach God. That is an unreachable goal. How can you, human being, think that by spending time meditating, levitating on top of a mountain, under the mountain, beneath the mountain, in the forest, by the lake, that you're going to reach God? How is that going to happen? How are you going to reach God? You know how it could happen? God reaches down to you and makes himself accessible. That's the only way this whole operation works. That's why we explain all, not every year, but every few years, I share the idea that, the Torah portion of Lech Lecha, our introduction to Abraham, is when God tells Abraham, go, leave your father's house, go to the land that I will show you. And the question is, Abraham was 75 years old when God gave the commandment. And in those 75 years, he discovered God. He was willing to give up his life for God. How come none of that backstory is mentioned? And the answer is because that was all of those episodes that are not mentioned were him, Abraham, reaching toward God. And no matter how far you reach, you will never reach it on your own. The only way God is accessible and the only context in which God is accessible is when God makes himself accessible, bending down, reaching down, crouching down toward us, and not the other way around. We can never reach God, but when God brings himself here, then we can grasp onto it. And when does God bring himself down here? And by the way, the first text, the previous text that we read, not the last one, the one before, says, in the place where you find God's greatness, you find his humility. Meaning, what is the greatness of God? That he makes himself accessible even to you and I, human beings. That's the greatness of God. God could have remained, up there. But God says, no, I want a relationship with these people. You and I. And that's God make himself accessible, yeah.
Besides the mitzvot, what about prayer?
Prayer is us finding a formula to speak to him, to strive toward, with the understanding that we're not actually going to ever grasp him with that, but we're striving toward. The mitzvahs are coming down to us and we're grabbing onto it. So listen, it depends on the class. So some classes will extol the virtue of prayer. Some classes will extol, like today, will extol the virtue of the mitzvah, doing the tangible mitzvah. Even if it seems so mundane. That's the whole point. It needs to be mundane. What are you going to do? You're going to philosophize and theorize and meditate on God and discover God? Come on. What does that even mean? You're going to figure out God through your head? Why is that a viable tool for figuring out the infinite? A very finite mind discovering the infinite? Probably not going to work. But you know what will work? When the infinite, because the infinite can do anything, crosses over the divide into the finite and says, hey, can you please take these leather boxes and bind them to your arm and head? And you're like, I can do that. I mean, I can't figure you out, but I can do that. Boom, there's a connection. You know what this means? And here's where this all comes in focus. Stay with me for a second. This is the bridge right here. Thank you for the drum roll. What this means is as follows. Oh, here are the boys. These are the boys that visited. I've been visiting the past week. They're all leaving tomorrow morning. So, except for my son who's staying. Well, my son came home and he brought friends with him. They've been going around. They study in the morning and they tour. They just got back from Tennessee last night. Been 2 days in Tennessee, Smoky Mountains, a cabin, hiking, waterfalls. They Lookout Mountain and all Gatlinburg. They stayed in Gatlinburg. Anyway, back to the story. Here's a bridge, and this is the most important part of it. When you show up Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, imagine the posture. I have what to show for myself. I have all these mitzvahs under my belt. Look at what I've done. I deserve a good year. Versus thinking to yourself, you know what a mitzvah is? A mitzvah is God giving me the opportunity to have a relationship with him. I'm so fortunate. I'm so lucky that God has chosen me to give me a mitzvah that I can do. Me, a physical, mortal, finite human being, God gave me something tangible that I can do to have a relationship with him. Every mitzvah is a treasure. I don't pat myself on the back and say, look at all my merits. All right, God, bring it on. I say, thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for giving me the opportunity, so many opportunities to connect with you. This is a completely different experience. We show up Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, not saying, God, let me cash it in, right? Here are all my chips, right? Cash it out, baby. Like, let's make it happen. We say to Hashem, wow, I'm so humble. I feel so, what's the right word? Unworthy of the kindness that you've given me and the opportunity, because I recognize that every mitzvah is not something that I've done. It's a gift from God that I've been able to touch it in the first place. It's God reaching down and saying, here, let me give you a handle that you can grasp onto. Otherwise, you'll be flailing in the middle of the atmosphere. But I've given you an anchor, a spiritual, a divine, a godly anchor to hold on to. That's the greatest gift. Which means that every mitzvah is an act of kindness. Every mitzvah is an act of, let me get back to the key word tonight, divine tzedakah, divine charity. God sees us, the beings, the mortal, finite, frail, flawed human beings that he created, and God says, let me give you something that you can touch. Let me give you a piece of me that you can access. And that's what a mitzvah is. So when we do a mitzvah, aha, look what I've done. I did a mitzvah. No. It's thank you, Hashem, for the opportunity to have a relationship with you in this moment, in this time, by using something physical. The things that I can relate to, I have the opportunity to take a bottle of water, Kirkland water, right? I have the opportunity to take a bottle of water, say a blessing and drink it and thank God for the water. I can do a mitzvah of saying a blessing to God, even on water. That's divine charity. That's divine tzedakah. Take a look at the next text. Yeah.
Is it an important question to even be concerned about when, it's related to prayer and Tovahs, you were kind of approaching God, and supposedly there's angels keeping everybody alive, for every leaf of every tree and everything. Is it important to know whether, what level of God, whether it's an angel or God's essence, or is that just...
For right now, so you're asking about which dimension so Kabbalah gets into extensively about which dimension of God is present where and how. But for right now, for this discussion, we're going to keep it very simple, that God is coming down to us and saying, I would like you to do this mitzvah. Take flour and water, make sure it doesn't rise, eat it on Passover. And what eating is, that's a mitzvah. Yeah, that's, you touch me with that. You can sit on a tree and on a tree stump or by a tree or in the forest and meditate on God for 7 days, and you still will not reach the infinite in the same way as eating matzah. It's an incomparable experience. Let's take a look at this next text. This is text number 8. I'm going to read it. We have a few important texts to cover, and we'll wrap up the next few minutes. The word mitzvah comes from tzavta, connection, bonding. When a person performs a mitzvah, he or she becomes connected with God, the one who commanded the command. This is the meaning of the statement of our sages. The reward of a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. The very fact that one becomes connected with the essence of God himself, the one who commanded the mitzvah, that itself is the reward. I want to pause on that paragraph for a second. You say, well, what do I get for doing a mitzvah? What do you get for doing a mitzvah? The fact that you got to do a mitzvah is the reward. I did a mitzvah, now what? Bro, you had an opportunity to interface with God, to do God's will. That is the ultimate reward. Let's continue. This can be understood with a physical analogy, and this may sound familiar. Imagine the simplest of people who pales in comparison before the wisdom and stature of a great sage, a nullification so complete that he has no sense of self-importance at all. From the perspective of the sage too, this simple person does not even register as a peer in the category of equals, not because the sage rejects or degrades him, God forbid, that would be a negative trait, but because there is simply no point of comparison or relationship. I already gave you the analogy, Einstein and the simple person. This is the similar concept. But when the sage instructs the simple person to do something for him, something new is created. Through the command, the simple person gains existence, both in his own eyes as someone capable of fulfilling the sage's will, and in the eyes of the sage as someone to whom he speaks and gives instruction. That very command unites the lofty, exalted sage with the simplest of people. The analogy speaks for itself. And in light of this, it's clear that there is no difference at all in what the command is, whether something great and elevated or small and simple. Either way, you're doing what the other, in this case, God, has asked. Now, in addition to this, more humility. One second, let me just frame the next text. So, number one, when you come to a mitzvah, when you've done a mitzvah and you come to God and say, look, I did a mitzvah, what is the posture? You say, I've done a mitzvah, I got all these credits. Let's go, bring it in. No, we already said no, because why? A mitzvah is a gift. It's God's gift to us. It's not our gift to him. We're doing God a favor. God did us a favor. God said, I'll give you something to hold on to from me. I'll give you something. My son, Ellie, went to Falcons training camp this week. Yeah. He's 12. He's not that good. He's not playing. He watched. Well, he's quick. He's quick. These big guys can't tackle. He went to training camp to observe in Flowery Branch. And he, when you go to, I've never actually been to a training camp, but he got some autographs. I went to Target with him the night before. I got him a football. He got because he has footballs, but they're all like beat up. So he got a football signed. He took a black Sharpie and a silver Sharpie. He got the whole thing. And then he told me that he went with a friend, and the other dad took them both. He said that his friend got a wristband, a headband, sweatband, one of the players, and he's like, oh, it's gross. But you know what? If it's your hero who gives you the sweatband, it's amazing. You don't care what it is. You got a piece of the athlete's wardrobe. I don't care that it's a sweatband. I don't care what the mitzvah is. You want me to like X, Y, I'm trying to think of what's a weird mitzvah. That's the chick, it's a custom. Whatever. You want me to do this, X, Y, and Z? Yeah. Huh? Waving the lulav, we could just go back to that one. Yeah. That's I always tell people, like, it's not a baseball, bro. Like, don't hit your esrog like that. That's not what that is. Watch the pitom. The point is that a mitzvah is not something we're doing for God. It's something that God did for us. That's one point. Second point, every mitzvah that you and I have done, we couldn't have done it without God. How do I know this? Without the breath of life, could you do a mitzvah? Of course not. Without health, could you do a mitzvah? Of course not. Without intelligence, could you do? Of course not. You can't do a mitzvah without God's gifts. Plus, the resources that you do a mitzvah with all come from God. So the whole experience is a gift from God, God's kindness and God's resources all the way through, front and back. Every mitzvah experience is kol kulei God. It's completely God. Take a look at this midrashic text. I've never seen anything more poetic. The divine spirit declares, who has ever given to me first that I should repay? Who praised me before I gave them a soul? Who spoke in my name before I gave them a child? Who made a parapet for me before I gave them a roof? Who affixed a mezuzah for me before I gave them a house? Who made a sukkah for me before I gave them a place? Who took a lulav for me before I gave them the means? Who put on tzitzit for me before I gave them a garment? Who set aside payah for me, that's a part of the field, before I gave them a field? Who spread truma for me before I gave them a threshing floor? Who separated challah for me before I gave them dough? Who brought an who brought an offering before me before I gave them an animal? Everything comes first from me. And no, this is not God getting territorial. This is God stating truth with the capital T and maybe even R-U-T-H, all in all caps. What is the truth? The truth is that a mitzvah is not something we do for God. It's something God has done for us. God has stepped down to us and given us an opportunity. And then he gave us the materials to do it with. He gave us the opportunity. He gave us the concept. He gave us the materials. He gave us the bottle of water that he then said to give back to him. You understand what's happening here? It's not that he said, come up with a bottle of water. Who gave us the water ultimately? Hashem, God Almighty. That's how much he loves us. And so if you think about the theme of high holidays and its judgment and its merits and etc., what is it? What does it evoke? God's kindness to us and God's compassion to us. And so I asked before at the beginning of the class, so why is tzedakah such an important mitzvah this time of year? And by now, hopefully the answer is clear. Because tzedakah reminds us of what God is doing for us. What is tzedakah? What is charity? It means you're helping someone in need. You're helping someone that doesn't have by giving them what they need. And isn't that exactly what God has done for us? You and I don't have any other way to connect with him. And what does he do? He gives us the means, the opportunity, the connection, the possibility. He creates all of that bridge for us. That is the ultimate tzedakah, charity that God does for us. This time of year, as we appreciate, as we think about, as we ask for more opportunities for divine charity, it's only right that we mirror that in our own lives and in turn give tzedakah, give charity to those in need. And so when Maimonides talks about the high holidays, yeah, it's a time of prayer and it's a time of extra good deeds and it's a time of increased mitzvah performance. But the first thing Rambam says is it's a time to give tzedakah. You know why? Because that's what God gives us every single moment of our lives. Tzedakah, charity. God gives us breath, God gives us resources, and God gives us the opportunity to connect with him. And it's only right, we do this all year round, but especially this time of year, to give tzedakah. And this also explains the mystery of why it's tzedakah, the mitzvah, the positive and the negative mitzvah, the commandment to give and the prohibition of not turning away from someone in need is specifically written in this week's Torah portion as we bless the month of El and get this high holiday season. Or, hey, if we know sports, there's always a pregame show. As we get the pregame show started to the high holidays, the month of El is a 30-day pregame show. You think the Super Bowl has a long pregame show, right? A whole, 12-hour pregame show. We got a 30-day pregame show. Boom, take that, NFL Network and Rich Eisen. Fellow Jew, good guy. Point is that as we kick off the high holiday season, the very Torah portion we read this week talks about the mitzvah tzedakah to remind us that we are only here by the grace of God. We are only connected by the grace of God. We only have the resources to do the connection points by the grace of God. And that should inspire us to recognize in humility and gratitude our place with God and our role to make this world a better place and in turn help those in need. Thank you very much for joining me for Torah Studies tonight. Hope this made sense, hope this resonates, and hope this is inspiring as well. Questions, comments?
Page 1 or page 81, text 1, number 4 says, however, there will be no needy among you. And then number 11 says, for there will never cease to be needy in the land.
Yaakov, you'll have to listen to the recording because I addressed that at the beginning of the class. The contradiction between verses 4 and 11. Yeah.
I think there's a big difference between using the word charity and justice.
And what, sorry?
Between charity and justice.
Yes, correct. Yep. And I think that's the point of tonight's class. Justice, I don't know. I don't think any of us are going to stand up on Rosh Hashanah and say, God, I deserve good. Right? Justice demands that I get blessed. We stand, you know what?
No,
never.
I don't see it that way. It's what you do. You have to do the just thing.
Oh,
and that's
yes. Also, yes. Tzedakah is not just the kind thing, it's also the right thing. Good, that's also true. Listen, that's true. Tonight we went in a slightly different angle. One other thing, just because I can't hold myself back from this, is if you take a look at text 14. Might be the last text in the book. All right, this is from the prayers of Slichot as we kick off the holiday season. It says, to you, God, belongs tzedakah, and to us, shame. Not with claims of kindness, nor with deeds do we come before you. We stand like the poor and the destitute knocking at your door. We recognize in our prayers that we don't really have, we can't come with our ego and our arrogance, even our spiritual arrogance, say, God, I deserve this, right? I have it on my credit card. Let me swipe and let me get what I need. We don't come with that posture. We come with a posture of humility, and we ask for God's tzedakah. And that's why this time of year, it's only right that we do the same for others. And we open up our hearts and open our hands, just like we wish God to do for us as well. All right, so that's the inspiration. Let's carry this into the new year. I want to wish everybody that it should be a very inspirational, a very productive, very introspective month of Elul. And I think maybe just to conclude with this, the age-old tradition is that during this month, we have 30 days. It's a time to think about the past year. There are many, the analogy that's given is if you're running a business, so, every so often you need to think about it. You need to look at how it's going, on a larger level. Are we making money? Are we not making money? Which products are selling, which are not? And it's about doing that kind of like internal vetting and internal, they call it cheshbon hanefesh, soul accounting, that we can really grow. Think about what in this past year has worked, what hasn't, what do I want to change, what do I need to change, how do I want next year to look better? This is the time to do it. And I know we're not yet in the month of Elul, it starts next week, but it's a good time to start thinking about this now. And then by the time we get to Rosh Hashanah, we're already in a good place, having mapped out that plan so that we're not starting Rosh Hashanah thinking, oh, what do I want for this year? We're already doing the work, in advance of that. That's the plan. That's the goal. And we're empowered to do it.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
How do we reconcile the Jewish New Year with the secular New Year, with as far as our goals and our projects and our mission statement?
What do you mean how to reconcile the two? Meaning, what should the difference between the Jewish New Year?
Should we prioritize one or the other? How do we regulate the whole?
So in Jewish thought, the Jewish New Year would be the time for real spiritual growth and change. It says that the Chabad Rebbes, who were all great tzaddikim, very righteous people, before Rosh Hashanah, they would always take on, meaning a resolution, a Rosh Hashanah resolution, to increase, to augment, to beautify a mitzvah. Not to do something they haven't been doing because they did all the mitzvahs, but to do it a little bit better than before. And I think that's a really good way to think about it. It doesn't have to be something that you're not doing, although it could be, but it could be something that you are doing, but doing it a little bit better, with a little bit more intention, a little bit more focus, a little bit more, I don't know, whatever it is, and everyone can choose their own thing or things. It's about going a little bit more. And I will say also that sometimes if you try to do too much, it can work against you, right? It's hard. It's hard to try to change everything in one thing, one element of change. But yeah, this time of year is definitely about spiritual change. January 1st, I don't know, by going to the gym, I think, primarily, right? I think those are the rules of the government. Like the USA says you have to make a resolution to go to the gym. That has to happen. But Rosh Hashanah is a little bit different. Rosh Hashanah is about, spiritual change. What do we want for our lives? Like, what are we thinking about? I invite everybody to join the Rosh Hashanah educational service. That's always a treat for those that can make it. Always a treat. We have a fantastic service. And it really sets the New Year's on the right tone. That's not that. Cue up the shofar. Right. Okay, that's my shofar imitation. One thing I've noticed, by the way, parenthetically, is that when you blow the shofar on Zoom, you can't hear the sound. We've done it before, Sunday mornings. In the month of El. Oh, in the month of El, you also blow the shofar every morning as in preparation. Yeah, it won't come out on Zoom. It blocks it. It thinks it's like some sort of outside noise. Yeah. I'm like, outside noise or anti-Semitism? I'm kidding. No, it's not that. It just blocks. It thinks it's like, yeah, there's like, whoa, that's a very weird sound. We are definitely going to block that from the poor ears of the Zoom participants. Meanwhile, it's like, no, you're cutting it out. It's funny because I've literally tried it, and I see some people here that have been there for this experience, including Dr. Maxey. We're like, I'll blow the shofar straight into the mic. Nothing.
Nada.
Nothing, unless I'm being pranked all these years. But no, really, you just can't hear it. Unless there's a certain setting where you can make it like music setting and instrument settings or whatever, then there's some sort of workaround that I've never found to really work consistently.
Background noise.
It's a background. Yeah, you suppress the background or suppression or turn it off or whatever it is. Yeah. I've tried to
Is
put.
I'm sorry. Is
Go.
davening from the siddur a mitzvah?
Depends how you define mitzvah. It's not one of the 613. Prayer is a mitzvah. Prayer is one of the 613. As Maimonides codifies it, prayer is when you need something, you ask God for it. The sages 2,000 years ago plus, formulated or created a formula for the prayers. And who better than the great sages that were, in the times of the prophets as well? Who better than them to know how to ask? How often do we struggle to find the right words for anything? That's why Hallmark exists, right? Think about it. Why does Hallmark exist? Why can't you just write your own card? Because I don't know what to say. Oh, that's cute. That's funny. Boom. That's poignant. That's powerful. Literally, Hallmark, America's greeting, makes billions of dollars probably, or whatever they make, just because people are like, I don't know what to say. And so the siddur is like a whole, wow, we should charge more for these siddurim. Wow, that's amazing. I'm just thinking about it now. I should reach out to Kahat, the publisher, be like, each page is like a greeting card. Each greeting card is like $4.99. This should be like a $1,200 item right here. Anyway, I didn't run the math. I didn't run the numbers. I'm just approximating. No, the idea is that there's no better formula than the one that is the tried and true formula in the Siddur. Doesn't mean that we can't add our own prayers and we can't speak to God from our heart in our own language and at our own times. That's not only allowed, that's actually required. It's a mitzvah to do that, but it's also a mitzvah to pray. And when we pray, it's good to use the Siddur. It's good to use the prayer book. Even if we know it by heart. The Rabbi, the Lubavitcher Rabbi, would always see him davening, like praying, while looking at the words inside. Amazing. You don't think he knew it by heart? Of course he knew it by heart. But he always looked inside. He wouldn't say anything at any of the prayers, even like a one-liner after, eating something. He would always open up the book and read it from inside. Something about that. Something about like the, just having that intentionality and presence and not rattling it off. Anyway. With God? Yeah, I think so, because God also created the mitzvah of prayer. So when we pray, we're not just asking for what we want, we're also doing what he told us to do. Meaning, how is it that when we pray, oh, now I'm actually addressing your question, right? Meaning, no, we've come full circle over here, right? Because when we pray, you could look at it as I'm just speaking to God, but then who are you to speak to God? Like, how do you know you have the right number? But when God says, here's what I'm giving you the power. I'm giving you the power of speaking to me. Oh, well, that's another gift that God gave us, the power of connection. God creates the phone lines, and then we're able to access it. Yeah. Powerful. Okay, we'll close it out. Thank you for joining. Laila Tov, welcome back. I'm waiting to unpack more stories from your adventures. You were gone for a month, right?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. That's more than a month.
Yep.
It's a month and a half.
Yep.
Teaching English to Israeli kids, adults.
So that part, the teaching the kids was only the one. I went a little before and a little after.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, looking forward to hearing more. And we'll see you soon. Laila Tov, everyone. Have a good night.
Laila
Good night,
Tov.
everyone. Good to see you all. Take care.